Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome. Buenos días y bienvenidos. Bom dia, bem-vinde. Meu nome é Gabriel de la Cruz. Eu sou o pronome ele. Eu sou gerente de projetos globais para a Equal em Latinoamérica. Eu sou peruano. É um prazer ter todos vocês hoje. Mi nombre es Jorge de la Cruz, mi pronombre es él, soy gerente de programas globales para América Latina en Equal y soy peruano. Y debido a la hermosa diversidad de idiomas que tenemos el día de hoy, esta sesión será en inglés. This session is going to be in English. So today's topic is navigating the impact of public policy on LGBTQI diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in Latin America. And I have to recognize that I'm super excited. And I'm super excited about this topic, these panelists that are with me today, because I think this is the topic, right? Changing political winds can impact public policy related to the LGBTQI community, and this is happening everywhere. How are we facing these new challenges? How are we supporting our teams? But more important, how are you feeling? This year, Out and Equal is working to create 4 webinars, one every quarter. Each quarterly webinar will delve into various aspects of LGBTQI inclusion, examining both challenges and opportunities unique to the Latin American context. The purpose of this panel is to open the conversation into a topic that exists in the DEIB field, but sometimes is difficult to have. That's why we created this safe space for our corporate partners to discuss the challenges we face every day. So this is going to be a closed door conversation. So please feel free to ask any questions you have. Before I welcome my wonderful panelists, I would like to go over some housekeeping. All participants are automatically muted by webinar administrators. Please type any questions using the Q&A feature. This session is closed door, but will be recorded, but we won't upload this in a public platform, of course, only in our global hub, so your colleagues can be part of this conversation as well. Please feel free to share it with them. So now I would like to welcome, thank you so much, Estela, for being here. I would like to welcome you and thank you so much, everybody, for participating and accepting to be part of this conversation. Stella, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Gabi, and thank you, Out and Equal. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to say bom dia, buenos dias a todos, todas, todes in Latin America. And my name is Estela Campané. I'm a proud Brazilian. My pronouns are she and her. I'm lesbian, and I have a great role. It's a gay job as a DEI strategic advisor for City Pride at Citibank at Citi. And it's a pleasure to be here with Mikel and Karen today and have this conversation, this very important conversation. So as we all know, the business community has become one of the most powerful advocates for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Even in markets facing regressive legislation towards LGBTQI plus people or hostile social environments, leading companies remain committed to advancing internal programs and policies that extend benefits to LGBTQI plus employees, including healthcare benefits, inclusive retirement plans, spousal partner benefits, transgender inclusive health insurance, gender identity recognition, employee resources groups, and beyond. In this 1-hour conversation, the participants will have the opportunity to learn directly from corporate leaders operating within the diverse and evolving regulatory environment of Latin America. So let's please make this interactive, ask questions, put in the chat, and through insightful discussion and practical examples, you will all gain valuable insights into navigating compliance, advocacy, and various LGBTQI plus related workplace policies and program challenges. And specifically, the panelists will also explore effective strategies for adapting to changing regulatory, legal, and public policy frameworks while upholding their commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I have the pleasure here to talk to Karen and Mikel today, and I'll hand over to them to introduce themselves and share a little bit about that. So Karen, I'll start with you. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you, Gabi. And hi, Mikel. It's an honor to be here. I'm already enjoying this conversation. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for inviting me. My name is Karin Ioannidis. My pronouns are her, she. I identify as queer and I'm the head of legal, patent, and compliance for Bayer in Chile. I work for an ERG at Bayer called Blend, and we support 5 different countries, which is Argentina, Uruguay, Bolivia, and Paraguay. So I get to be aware and to interact with people from different countries in the region, which is very exciting. So thank you again.
Super. Thank you, Karin. Mikel.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you, all, and Nico. Thank you, everyone that is attending. Thank you, Stella. Thank you, Karin. I think we're going to create a beautiful discussion here that is very important to all communities in diversity matters, but especially to LGBTQI plus folks around Latin America. Bom dia, buenos dias, good morning. My name is Mikel Mergener. I prefer neutral pronouns, they, them, or ele, dele in Portuguese, because I identify as a trans, non-binary, gender fluid person. But because of that fluidity, you can also address me in masculine or feminine pronouns, because all types of pronouns speak to my essence. There's no mistakes with me. I am actually an entrepreneur. I am the founder and the CEO of Merg, which is a company that I created in 2022 to help other companies and the people inside them with consultancies and mentorships to promote not only diversity and inclusion, but also anti-discrimination compliance for us to make the impact that is necessary, while avoiding unnecessary risks. I am graduated in law school in a university in Rio de Janeiro. So I use my legal knowledge to further the solutions of diversity and inclusion that I provide within my company. For me, it is, as I said, an honor to be here, a privilege really to be speaking about the issues concerning Brazil, especially Brazil, which is where I'm from. I come from a family that is half Portuguese and half German. That's why I have this German name, but I was born and raised in Brazil, so I tend to joke saying that the cup is European, but the coffee is Latino. So I am a proud Latino, even though I have this European surface. And for me, it's also, as I said, it is an honor, a privilege, and I'm very excited to join you in this conversation that we're trying to help companies within the Altenico ecosystem to advocate for LGBTQI plus rights within their corporate environment. And there's plenty that these companies can do, right?
Yes, plenty. And thank you for sharing both of your backgrounds. And I love the diversity of this panel also in your personal background. So thank you. And I have a question to both of you. I would like to start with Karen. How has your country regulation and culture impacted your personal and professional lives? So if you'd like to share.
Sure. I think the best way to show how it has impacted is it's mentioning the fact that I came out at 44. I think that that says a lot. When the culture is very conservative, when you're born in a dictatorship that was especially cruel with the LGBTQI plus community, it is it is up today an act of courage to come out in Chile, and I would say most countries in Latin America. So yes, laws have changed quite a lot in Chile. We have same-sex marriage since 2 years ago. We have identity gender laws. We are getting there, I guess. But culture not necessarily goes hand to hand with law or vice versa, right?
Yeah.
So I think um, hugely it has impacted me, the regulation and the culture, because I wasn't able to allow myself to be who I was. It's not just that I was hiding something, I wasn't accepting myself. So it's been 4 years since I'm out, and there are so many reasons why I think this is the best moment of my life, and why I want to share this with everyone and to be a part of the people that open up and show other people that there is, even though there's still some fears to coming out, the benefits are so much larger, right? So
Yes. And congratulations for that, for your visibility, for coming out and being also a role model to other LGBTQIA plus women, because this is very important. So thank you.
thank you.
Mikel.
So I have a little bit to talk more. I was going to ask Karin if you want to elaborate just a bit more on the rights that we have assured in Chile, because I'm going to address that regarding Brazil.
Of course, yes, no problem. Yes, in Chile we do have same-sex marriage, and we have identity gender laws, and but the reality is very diverse in the area where I developed my ERG. I would say Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay have a different reality where slowly we have been getting there to have same rights and no discrimination laws that are enforced. But Bolivia and Paraguay are still really far away. It's at the moment it's unsafe to be LGBTQI plus in Paraguay. People uh, don't feel secure enough, and they don't. It's not only that there are no laws, right? Of course, there's no same-sex marriage or any kind of recognition of the LGBTIQ plus community, but it's also unsafe because it is really persecuted in many places still. So in Chile, I feel quite I think we are going through the right path. We are not there yet. We do need to. I think we have the structure, but there's no conviction. When you go to court and when you go you have to apply the law. I think there's some ambiguity. So it's a little frustrating, right? Because you do sometimes have the framework and you think, oh well, now I can get married. But then 2 seconds later, there is someone that comes and says, well, we should challenge if they have the right to adopt. So it's like it's very
Yeah.
fragile all the time. I think we'll deep down in this topic, right? But I do think currently in Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay, we do have a framework that's quite okay, but the reality we experience daily not necessarily matches the advance we have accomplished in the lawmaking.
It feels
That's why,
fragile.
yeah. You go, Mikel, please.
Yeah, now my turn. I agree so much with you, Karin. I think that it is already a huge challenge to get the rights to minimally be ensured somehow by laws or by decisions of the Supreme Court, something like that. And even when we have those rights, we still have to make sure they're respected in our daily lives, because what's there on paper may not show in our lives. And even then, we have resistance. We still have rights being challenged, and people trying to come after those rights that are fragile, but are minimally insured. So I think we have an ongoing fight, and especially in Latin America. I'm going to explain first the rights that the LGBTQI plus community has assured in Brazil, and then I'm going to relate that to my personal story to encompass all the things that Stella brought in her question. When it comes to Brazil, we actually have, I would say, a paradox, because we kind of have um, several rights minimally assured, minimally respected because of decisions held by the Supreme Court in Brazil. However, I think that because of our community in Brazil, because we have this visibility, we have some rights, we have some representation in the media and in politics, because we are seen, we are also more violated. We're also more hurt because of that. So that's why I think it's a paradox in Brazil, because compared to other countries, we have plenty of rules regarding the LGBTQI plus community that are kind of, respected. But because of that, because our community is so seen, we're also very much attacked because of that. So we have this issue. In Brazil, we have state legislation, but we do not have federal laws granting rights to the community. We depend mostly on the constitution. We have a constitution. Karim mentioned we had in several countries in Latin America dictatorships that actually regressed a lot and prohibited LGBTQI plus existences in many ways. So in Brazil, when the dictatorship ended, we drafted and published a new constitution in 1988 that is still respected today. And this constitution grants rights to all Brazilians related to non-discrimination, to dignity. So it has like a huge background, a framework in our constitution for granting the LGBTQI plus rights, but the specific interpretations of the constitution are only today protected, said by the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court in Brazil is the main institution that is protecting our community within the country. And we have different decisions from the Supreme Court that granted rights. We have, for example, since 2013, we have the same-sex marriage rights in Brazil, even though it is still challenged. Last year, people proposed a bill on the National Congress to try to prohibit the same-sex marriage, even though in 2013 that right was already granted. So, as I said, it is an ongoing fight for these rights. In 2019, the Supreme Court ruled that LGBTQI plus phobia is a crime, but we still suffer a lot of violence. So, it's not a right that it's actually being so much respected, but even though it exists, we also have in Brazil, transgender people actually have the right to have our gender identity recognized, even if we do not have any kind of surgery or hormonal treatment. We don't have to change our bodies to have our gender identity recognized. But this right is still very, very, very fragile. The main reflex of this right is the right to change our documents. And this right is mostly working today, is mostly protected, but all other rights that are reflections of the gender identity recognition, for example, the respect of our chosen name and the use of bathrooms that are according to our gender identity, those other reflexes of these rights are still even more uncertain. We have many news of trans people having their rights to use the bathroom violated and then suing the company or the event that actually made that possibilitated this kind of thing to happen. And we also have other rights like adoption and parental rights since 2010. And we also have, as I said, public awareness related to LGBTQI plus folks. We have rules, for example, that grants inside federal schools and universities the rights of the LGBTQI plus students to be respected in their gender identities. But as I said, the rights are still very fragile, and most of them were only assured after 2010. And I think that I was born in 1996. So I'm turning 28 next month, and I lived experience completely different from Karin's experience, in the sense that when I came out in 2015, my country had already like developed a lot of initiatives to protect our community. So I lived through a different period, but even
Yeah.
though I faced a lot of challenges, just to finish off relating to my personal history, my personal story, I think that um, I, I actually lived as a cisgender straight woman until I was 19. And when I was 19 in 2015, I came out as a bisexual woman, and then in 2016 as a lesbian. And even though I faced some kind of homophobia at that time, I think that I did not feel especially threatened in my existence until I came out as trans. I think that when I let my masculine essence free itself, the lesbian identity started to feel limited for me. And then I came out as trans. My previous name was a very like common Latin name, was Maria. And when people called me Maria, 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 it was like they were not talking to me. So I did that change in my life in 2020. I changed names, I changed my gender identity, I changed everything in my life, and that's when I felt that everything shifted, because in Brazil we have the halting statistics that our country is the one with the most records globally of transgender murders for the 15th year in a row. So I think that things changed a lot when I started to present myself as transgender. I faced a lot of transphobia, but I think that in Brazil, relating my personal story to the rights assured in Brazil, I think that we still have a long way to go. But the fact that we have, this minimal structure of rights kind of protected, I feel that when I came out, it was not as scary uh, than compared to if I had come out in the dictatorial and in the dictatorial period like Karin did. So I think that, and I'm kind of nervous, so I'm sorry for these, but I think that just finishing off, my story is very much related to these aspects of the Brazilian law related to LGBTQI plus rights. So I am privileged, I am white, I come from a background of privilege compared to other trans people, especially trans women of color in Brazil, travestis, how we call them, also another name we used here in Brazil. So I am privileged, and that's why I use my privilege today to try to bring not only diversity and inclusion solutions, but also anti-discrimination compliance to companies and people inside Brazil. So we can try, to keep going on this path of assuring more rights. I'm sorry if
Yes.
I
No,
talk too much.
it's perfect, Mikel. And that's very important, the aspect of both of you talking about, country legislation and how it impacted your personal stories. I can share high level here that I was married to a trans man, and we are both Brazilians, right? And the same way, when I was coming to the US in 2015, we chose to live here because living here we had more protection, and mainly for the organization that I was at the time. So it was a really smooth process for us to be here. And also my company was sponsoring our green cards and the transition also. So we were so safe here, more than in Brazil, more than living in Brazil. And I remember the former president also, we were afraid of what was going to happen, because he couldn't change legally his name and passport, and then we were part of this process. So I really understand, how the law can impact our personal experience. And I want to transition this question now, talking about workplace environment, right? So I want to go to Karin, and and ask her, can you share examples of specific policy challenges related to LGBTQI plus rights and workplace inclusion that your organization has encountered in your country or region, and how you address them?
Sure. Yes, I just wanted to point out something related to what Mika was saying, that it's so important to make sure that there is a cultural change, more important than a change of law, right? Because otherwise, as you mentioned, Mikkel, like we expose ourselves believing that this framework allow us to be who we are, but then if the culture hasn't changed around, it exposes us much more. So it's a tricky game when you have the rights, but you don't have, that doesn't go simultaneously with the change of of mind of culture. So yeah, in the same in the same it's very related to this. In Paraguay, in Bolivia, we do experience daily problems when it comes to the LGBTQI plus community. People at the Blend ERG, that we are part of, don't even feel secure to post on LinkedIn. They are part of this ERG, because they have received menaces and they have been bullied and they have been outside of the company. And so what we do in those countries is to visit more, to go and go louder inside the company, because we don't want to expose anyone, right? So we make sure that people, even the people that don't want to hear, have to hear this story. Sometimes we invite everyone in the company, not everyone attends. We have almost no men attending some training when it comes to LGBTIQ plus rights. It's very impressive when you get to see those rooms where there's no men attending, because there is a bias, there is discrimination, and it seems to me what Chile looked like in 1980, like that's my feeling when I get to see that. Same in Bolivia. And we struggle, as we mentioned earlier, we have a certain number of rights, but we are never sure if tomorrow we will have them, right? So this is a daily struggle. And 2 weeks ago, the current government of Argentina decided to ban any kind of inclusive language in any public action. And that's reality, right? And they say it's because of political reasons, and doesn't bring any benefit. So when we face this kind of situation, what we do is, again, go louder and explaining why this is important, why this is not a fashionable thing, or why this is just a political or left-wing or right-wing
showing the real culture of the company.
Exactly. So what we do is we are actually preparing this relaunch of the guideline, of inclusive language guideline, in order to remind everyone what's the reason behind this. We want to make a space for everyone. We want to make sure that everyone feels represented. We want to make sure that there's, with little thing, we can make someone feel safe. Why wouldn't we do it? And if you bring it from the right place, from tolerance, from caring, people do understand, from empathy. Like when I have told people, hey, when you talk about your wife or your husband, you are making me come out every time.
Yeah.
Because so if you use partner, you give me, I can decide whether I come out or not. So and I have lots of friends that thought it was useless, and then thought, okay, I never thought of that. And they have incorporated new ways of speaking, because it is important to someone you care. So we advocate, and as you mentioned at the beginning, Stella, like we have so much power, right, to advocate from a neutral perspective,
Yeah.
no political. So when we say something in the comparison, there's an echo that comes with it. So yeah, we are alert all the time about what is happening around us, to reinforce what we think is a legitimate space we should keep, and for that, if we have to go louder or further every time, that's what we are here for, right?
Yes, no, I agree completely. And I think also to your point, the power of allyship, so we are talking about the LGBTQI plus community, but also how are we educating allies to support the community? We are always an ally to someone, right? So at City, we have allyship 365 programs, and we try to, foster this community and say it's okay to make mistakes, ask questions, understand about the other diversity dimension. And so I really highlight that too as one powerful tool for organizations, to continue. And Karen, going back, I would like to go deeper in the topic of inclusion that we were speaking. In the US, as we know, we have more than 500 state bills introduced that attack, the LGBTQI plus community. And over 200 specifically bills target transgender and gender non-conforming people, right? So it's unfortunate that we are facing that here, and it's not only here, right? It affects everywhere. And so how do they affect Latin America? And how do you assess the potential risks and opportunities associated with these regulatory changes or policy developments in the workplace?
Yeah, we have historically, at least in the last century, looked up to the US in so many ways, and they have been a role model in such a good way when it comes to LGBTQI plus rights, right? So there is this expression, I don't know if you have it in Brazil, but we say it in Chile, it's like when the US sneezes, Latin America already gets the cold, because we like it's
Yes.
like it's related to economy, of course, right? But I think it's the same when it comes to our rights.
Yeah.
If the US is questioning the transgender rights, the next day you have a candidate in Chile saying that transgender is a made up thing, or saying how we should ban, or we should go back to uh, therapy that will bring them back to their right place. Like we have had this kind of discussion lately back in Chile and in Argentina. I just mentioned that example, right? It's very sad because we used to look up to Europe a lot, I would say, at the beginning of the last century, but then the US became our role model. So every time there is this questioning of our rights, we end up having a big discussion that sadly may end up in the next government as a proposal that will end up banning or prohibiting or decreasing our rights. So we go back to the same point of starting point, right? It's like how fragile our right if we don't know the
Yep.
the next government will change it, right? And we could aim to have it on a constitutional level, but as Mika said, that also is not enough. So of course, it gives us more stability, and we should aim for that, to have a really a structure of non-discrimination and tolerance and acceptance that should be granted by constitution. But that's the first step from all the others, right? So yeah, we look up to the US. We are scared when we see what happened in Florida, what is happening in Texas. It's scary because it's contagious.
Mm-hmm.
It's contagious in the worst possible way, because especially when there are people that feel free to attack and to actually mistreat people and that become legitimate, you open a gate that can only lead to lots of pain and harm for a community that is already mistreated. So, well, we'll be doing what we can, but it's really hard when the big structures are against you, right?
Yeah.
So I
No.
don't know if I fully answer your question, but
No, yes. I think this is very, very important. And also, Mikael's work, I was, when he was explaining about what other companies are doing, what other companies are bringing, it helps us all also as benchmark, right? So sometimes we think we are doing enough, but then we say there's more, right? There's more that we need to do. And so, Mikael, I want to turn over to you and say, and just ask how companies effectively leverage their influence and resources to advocate for internal inclusive policies, benefits, and practices in the face of changing regulatory environments and influence in advance LGBTQI plus rights outside of the workplace.
Thank you for the question. Within my company, we actually have partners in different regions of the world, but I actually specialize myself in the Brazilian scenario. So I'm going to use Brazil as an example here of these kind of influences and leverages that companies can apply to Latin America. So in Brazil, we still see very few companies that are openly advocating for LGBTQI plus rights throughout the year, besides efforts only made on June because of Pride. So we see policies, benefits, and practices focused on the LGBTQI plus community, mostly in multinational companies. So national companies, only like the biggest ones, I think Brazilian companies are still like very slow in this moment, in this movement, compared to multinational companies. Multinational companies are already bringing these international trends. So I think that multinational companies in Brazil, operating in Brazil, are kind of setting the example that other companies can follow, even though there are national companies that invest in diversity, but they are also influenced by these global trends that comes through the multinational companies. So I think that it is a current demand of the DEI community in Brazil to expand these policies, benefits, and practices dedicated to the LGBTQI plus community, for them to go further, not only to be advertised in June because of Pride. So, but we have a few examples. I'm going to bring a few examples. And I think in Brazil, we see many companies offering, for example, health insurance plans that cover different trans needs for treatments and surgery, but it's still very rare to see companies actually publicizing benefits dedicated to their trans employees. So they're like, oh, we have a huge like health insurance and all your needs are inside that. That's one thing. But we have fewer companies that are actually saying like, you transgender employee, if you come, we'll have benefits dedicated to your reality, not just, bring up your needs inside our health insurance plans. So I brought two examples. Mondelez and Kraft Heinz have announced in Brazil, in their operations in Brazil, the benefits dedicated to help transgender employees in their transitions, like specifically to their needs, but it's still very rare, as I said. And besides that kind of general thing that is happening, that companies are trying to bring the LGBTQI plus rights within the benefits that they already have, but without mentioning that this is dedicated to this community. Besides having that kind of phenomenon happening in the country, I'm going to give also two practical examples that I see that actually are happening or happened in the past, of how companies can advance advocating for LGBTQI plus rights. The first example that I have is when a right is granted, but the government is still adapting to make sure that this right is completely protected. For example, in Brazil, as I said, the Supreme Court have ruled that trans and non-binary people have the right to to have their gender identity recognized and respected. We have that right, theoretically. However, the system used by the Brazilian government to register data related to the employees of the companies operating in Brazil does not have an option that respects the non-binary gender identities. So the Brazilian system for these employee informations called e-social, this system has only the options for feminine sex and masculine sex, and does not have options to inform your gender identity. So how can a company respect the Brazilian government system, but also try to protect their non-binary employees? Companies in Brazil have been doing something that I advise them to keep doing, which is in their systems, the companies have systems to store their employees' data. So they use their own internal systems to inform their employees. When a transgender, non-binary employee is like filling this application, like giving their personal information to the company actually informs in the system, like, we have to collect this data related to your sex because the government still asks that, but this information will only be used to this specific purpose, and outside of this purpose, every other communication will only have the information of your gender identity and not the sex
Great.
information that you're going to provide now. So that's kind of a way to, respect the government, but also protect the community. And the second example that I want to give, this one is more related to external influence of the companies and how they can advocate for the community. But before I move on to my second example, just a parenthesis here. Still within that example of rights that are still trying to be effective in the day-to-day life, for example, we have the rights in Brazil that trans people can change their documents without surgery, as I said. But to actually change your documents, it sometimes takes legal knowledge and financial resources that many trans people do not have. So many companies in Brazil are actually providing for their trans employees the benefit of legal knowledge and financial resources to help them change their documents. So the right is assured by the government, but many people can't access that right yet because of the lack of knowledge and financial resources. So companies are trying to help their employees in this sense. A few companies that are doing this in Brazil are Starbucks, Unilever, and Heineken. They're doing that. They're helping their employees with the change of documents. And now to my second example, to finish off this long answer, but I think it will be helpful. The second example is more focused on external influence, as I said. In Brazil, in 2020, the state of São Paulo proposed a bill called PL 504/2020, PL 504/2020, and this bill actually tried to prohibit all kinds of advertising that related to sexual diversity in propaganda directed to children. So basically, the bill tried to prohibit all kinds of LGBTQ presence in advertising related directed to children. And at that moment, we had like a huge movement of the corporate sector. We had like over 100 big companies operating in Brazil joining forces to release a note trying to have efforts against the approval of this bill. I actually had the privilege to help drafting this note. At the time, I was working at Matos Filho, which is a huge law firm here in Brazil. So the Brazilian corporate community mobilized itself, and not only they wrote this note, but actual companies like Doritos, like Coca-Cola, they actually launched marketing campaigns that were directed on trying to, sensibilize the society and make people see that this bill should not be approved, that LGBT people should be able to be in marketing campaigns directed to children, that we are not a danger to children. So, Coca-Cola also had Coca-Cola, I mentioned Burger King, MasterCard. We have had like different companies actually, putting money into advertising against this bill, and we did it. The bill was not approved, and even though this challenge can happen again, I think it showed like very clearly how the corporate sector inside Brazil is mobilized to try to advocate for LGBTQI plus rights, and it happened. This actually happens in 2020. So I think those are a few examples of how companies can use their leverage and use their influence inside and outside their boundaries to try to help our community.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Great examples and practical examples. And thanks for highlighting these companies as well. It's important for people to understand who is really, doing a lot for the community. And so I want to just be mindful of time, and hopefully we'll have time for questions. Let's see. But the last question for both of you would be, what would you expect from the private sector, going forward? So I would like to start with Karin and then finish with Mikel, the question. So you can share.
Yeah, I would expect to keep in mind how powerful we are, right? Like what we can bring. Big companies, especially multinationals like Bayer and all the big ones, have an impact worldwide that can set some rules around them. And at Bayer, we have incorporated lately some non-discrimination and specifically LGBTIQ plus respect and rules when it comes to our suppliers. We demand from them to sign at least a commitment to respect and support the rights of the minorities. And therefore, we already have an impact, not only inside the company, making sure everyone that works at Bayer is safe, but we also are expanding this, right? And when I think of the example you just gave, Mikel, about advertising, what we can do, and that's something we have been doing, we are now approaching the marketing area. 30 seconds in the Super Bowl can change a culture. When for Father's Day, you have two fathers holding hands in a campaign, that changes culture. So we can be full of words and full of laws, and which is super important. Don't get me wrong, but we may not have the power to change any law, but we can change the perception of things, and we can approach the needs of our community with the right allies. And corporations are the biggest ally we can have now. They have no political draft, and I think, and this is something we discussed earlier, like I think when you are part of the legal team, of part of the DEI team of a corporation, you're trying to do things right. You're trying to bring justice, right? We are trying to do things just the way they should be. So if we gather more people and we make them work in the same direction, I do think we can have great impact. I know what we did in Bayer supporting the I Do campaign before the approval of same-sex marriage. There were over 60 multinational companies saying like I do, going crazy with the rainbow flag. And it makes an impact, and people realize that you are a little out of place if you decide not to be a part of this movement. So yeah, I think we have to be fully aware of the power we have, and we have to keep walking that path. We are lucky enough to have had so many people that have gone through so much pain to get us here, right? So it's our duty to keep going even though I do think it's easier nowadays, there's still 65 countries in the world where being homosexual is a crime.
Yeah.
So well, I was thinking about getting married with my partner, and we decided we could not get married if we wanted to visit one of those countries, because we would have to lie in the immigration paperwork, in the visa paperwork. So we decided not to get married because I love traveling. So, and as Mika said, I come from a privilege. Uh, like I feel very privileged for what the way I had to experience my queerness, right? But it is hard, and I do think if we talk more about this and we make more people engage and understand that even though you're privileged, you're still lacking rights. I think we can end up bringing more people together and changing like deeply the culture and of course the laws. So and
Yeah.
I think corporations has a lot to do in this. I feel very lucky to be working in a company that allows me to be who I am and that is willing to risk their public image to defend those rights. So I think we should go and keep working that way as well.
Yeah, no, that's, you said it all. That's perfect, Karen. And Mikel, what would you like to add to this?
Oh my God, I think that in Latin America we're kind of in the middle ground because we don't have our existence prohibited in the countries, but we still don't have, safety. And I think that safety is the key word here because all we want is that, regardless of political things that might come in mind, we don't want to talk about politics. We want to talk about the safety of LGBTQI plus people inside our countries. And many times, LGBTQI people don't feel safe in their country, not even in their family, but they can feel safe inside their work. They
Yeah.
can feel safe inside the company they're working in. Inside their boundaries, here I'm safe. This we can try to assure. And I think that my wish for the private sector moving forward is really to try to ensure safety for all LGBTQI plus employees inside your ecosystem. Not only employees, but as Karin said, also suppliers and partners, commercial partners. I think that LGBTQI plus folks must be protected inside the company, and not only in the office jobs. In between walls. I think that also the field workers that are dealing, with low paid jobs, with harsh conditions. I think those are also the LGBTQ people that we have to keep in mind. So if LGBTQ employee in like a field job is being harassed, is being discriminated, then you still have a long way to go. We cannot stop thinking only about the office employees, and I would also go further. I think that when it comes to anti-discrimination compliance, also, which is the rules that try to ensure that discrimination cases don't happen within our companies, those rules of anti-discrimination compliance, I think that in many companies they kind of stick to the process of creating the governance methods. They create the ethics committee, they create a code of conduct, policies, reporting channels, and they stop there. They create this huge framework, but they do not, they don't make sure that this framework is actually working for the people that these instruments are trying to protect. So I think that companies need to ask themselves a few questions. For example, can my LGBTQI plus employees access and understand my policies? Do they know how to use the reporting channel? Who is going to receive claims of discrimination, harassment, and process them? Who are those people? Are they actually prepared to deal with LGBT phobia cases properly? Do they know how to identify, investigate, and apply disciplinary measures related to LGBT phobia? How are the LGBT phobic leaders in the company disciplined?
Yeah.
If you don't have if you don't have full answers to these questions, then your job is not enough already. You have to go further. You need to, investigate your compliance initiatives and make sure that they are actually effective to everyone, not only to those people that have knowledge on legal grounds, on human rights, and that they know how to protect themselves. Many times those rules, those initiatives don't actually work for the people that don't know how to defend themselves. So this is my final question, final message for the private sector. Let's go beyond the papers. Let's go beyond the structure, and let's actually investigate and monitor the efficiency of our anti-discrimination compliance. Otherwise, you're not making sure that your LGBTQI plus employees are actually protected and safe.
Yeah, zero tolerance for discrimination. I agree. So we are coming to an end. I know we had a great discussion here, so I just want to, provide a highlight of the session and very high level here. You all have our contacts if you have questions, so you can connect with us as well. So just a summary of what we went through today in the topics. We have seen progress in LGBTQI plus basic rights in Latin America in the regulatory landscape. And some individuals are constitutionally protected from discrimination. We've expanded legal gender recognition in some countries, not many, but some countries. So we have Brazil, Colombia, Uruguay, Argentina, and some other countries. But we've been facing also a backlash from social far right, religious conservative leaders, putting the population, the LGBTQI plus population, in risk and victims of discrimination and violence still as part of this culture in the region. We all agree that companies are the most powerful advocates as well, and individuals too, allies, and we are key drivers to inclusion and change, and we should continue to assess the approaches to mitigate risks, leverage opportunities to drive more inclusion. We should revisit our practices internally, continue to provide compliance training, zero discrimination policies, implement criteria to hire vendors and who have strong DEI practices and who are aligned with our values as well. And most of all, we need to continue to create a safe space and, foster allyship for people. So I would like to thank both of you. Obrigada, gracias, for sharing not only the amazing work, impactful work that you're doing, but your personal stories, different generations, different backgrounds, different perspectives, and that's what made it so rich today, and our connection as well. So thank you for that and for this inspiration. And I'll just hand over, I don't know, we have 1 minute here, hand over to Gabriel de la Cruz, our dear Gabi, Senior Manager, Global Impact Programs, and Altanico to finalize the session. So thank you very much.
I just wanted to say thank you for being part of this panel. I also took a lot of notes, and I think we should keep this conversation open. I would like to invite people that are also in this call to come to Brazil. We will have our Latin Forum May 9 this year. So reach out with your company and reach out to Out and Equal. So maybe we could keep this conversation in person. I think we need places and this kind of safe space for LGBTQ people, that we could have this conversation where we could share our own stories, reflections, and also share experience and good practices. Thank you so much, and see you in the next virtual webinar. Bye-bye.
Thank you, gracias. Obrigada.
Obrigado.
Bye.
Obrigada.
Thank you.